I'm very excited to be sitting here with Dr. Russell Wise today. And thank you so much, Russ, for coming to meet with me and take a trip down memory lane. As I was preparing for today, I was sort of taking myself back to when I first met you. And I recall that as I was doing my research for Mark Crossweller and really getting my head around what the Profiling Australia's Vulnerability Project was going to be, I knew the in-house capability within Emergency Management Australia did not have the sorts of skills that I was looking for. Very, very talented people, extraordinary people, but they're particular skills I was looking for. And I went to a bunch of different workshops and events around Canberra and spoke to a lot of different people, looking for the right person, the right skills, knowledge, and experience that I felt was going to be important to be successful with the project. And I think you and Paul Box were facilitating the climate risk information system services. Yeah. And so that was a couple of days. I think it was 2 days or something. And I felt and heard from you both that there was something in your methods and your experience that could help us. So I introduced myself to you. How about you introduce yourself to us and give us a sense of your incredible accomplishments and what you're currently doing now?
Oh, thank you. So I'm a principal research scientist at CSIRO, sustainability economist by training, and I currently lead the Enabling Resilience Investments Initiative in CSIRO, and it's actually an initiative that emerged out of the work that we did together.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad to hear that it's continuing in CSIRO.
Yeah, well, through the process of working with you and Mark in the development of the National Disaster Risk Reduction Framework, one of the priorities obviously was increased investment in disaster risk reduction. And we were approached, as you remember, by insurers and banks, and they were all very interested in how in supporting this and understanding what they could do. And it became a very clear priority for the nation that we had to better understand why we aren't investing enough in disaster risk reduction, and starting to work out how we can address the challenges and create that enabling environment. So all the work we're currently doing came out of the work that we did together back then. And I suppose my big passion in life is how we can better support all levels of decision making and community, just better understand where we're heading in the context of the changing climate, and enable them to be better prepared. So,
Wonderful. I have to say, working with Russ and the other team within CSIRO has been one of the highlights of my career. It was absolutely such a pleasure. Russ, let's go back to, I want to come back to what you just said about the sustainability
economics.
Yes, and the Resilience Initiative, because part of what we've learned along the way and what we were dealing with as part of the project was knowing that the stakes are so high and getting higher. So let's go into the heart of one of the very fundamental roles that you played with the Profiling Australia's Vulnerability, and that was one of the lead participants with us on co-designing the actual process we used to safely take people into a world, an imaginary world that sadly seems to be becoming reality, the imaginary world of significant disaster scenarios and catastrophic weather events and natural hazards. Can you talk to us and share what your thinking was? Once we had briefed you on what we were looking for, and we started unpacking and designing how to go about it, what you brought to the table. Do you remember? I certainly do.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that, I mean, I've been working in the climate adaptation area now for over 15 years. And one of the things that we find in every project that we work on is this absence of understanding or a lack of recognition of the impending changes that are likely to happen. And so a really important part of if you're going to undertake an engagement process is to design it in a way that gets people to participate in a very immersive way to understand and to help reveal and get them to learn through discussions with a diverse set of stakeholders and perspectives on these issues what is potentially at stake and what could plausibly happen. And
can I just pause there, because I'm triggering a memory. And I think with this conversation and you explaining that, I stopped to think about how we, right from the get-go, agreed that anything we do in this space had to be done with as many of the sectors of the Australian economy as we could muster up. And we needed to create the right environment to take them into this world.
Yeah. And I think that's for a few reasons. One of the things that we find is that a lot of the individuals that are responsible for preparing for disasters or emergency management are required to understand certain elements of the system and have a framing on the risks and the issues and the challenges that pertain to their mandate, their responsibilities. And it's generally only a part of the problem, and they have only got a mandate to address some of the issues that need to be addressed. And so one of the things about climate change and how natural hazards are likely to change and disasters are likely to change under climate change is that it's going to require bringing in these diverse perspectives and starting to coordinate and collaborate across different organizations and different government portfolios in order to be able to get much more of a coordinated and collective response.
The systems thinking that we introduced as part of this was quite a challenge for a lot of people to wrap their head around, wasn't it? To really understand their place in the system. And it went beyond just, like, for example, just being responsible for managing an asset. They're responsible for managing a service.
Yeah.
That was profound to some people, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
Along the way.
I think there's two things around that is important that is why you need to take a systems approach. One of them is this idea that if you help broaden the focus from trying to manage assets or particular buildings in a place to the services that they actually provide and generate, it introduces a wider set of stakeholders that can be a part of the solution, because services actually can be provided through different mechanisms, but also you can reduce dependencies on the services so that shared responsibility model can be enabled. I think the other important thing around the services perspective, also the systems perspective, is that a lot of the causes of our vulnerabilities happen distributed through the system. And so if you get a better understanding of who are the stakeholders and what are the incentives that are making them do things that are actually creating vulnerabilities elsewhere, again, you have more levers that you can start to influence in order to actually reduce vulnerability. So that systems perspective is really important for understanding the causes and exploring a wider set of ways in which you can manage the businesses.
And that view, that sort of foundational thinking, went into the design of the major workshops that we ran around the country, and that you were the main facilitator. And
the other important element of the design of the engagement and the engagement I mean, we did a range of different kinds of engagement, didn't we? But one of the main ones was the big workshops where we brought a range of stakeholders together.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of hard work involved in actually making sure we talked to
Doing
groups and had focus groups and developing scenarios so that we had all the things in place so that when we delivered the workshops, they were well, we were very well and truly prepared for them. But one of the key things about the design of the workshop was that we had to get people to recognize the need to think differently and to have conversations that would not normally be part of the things that they talk about. And so one of the main elements that we brought into the design was this idea that we had to develop scenarios that were plausible and entirely scientifically credible, and not just scientifically, but all sorts of different expertise and experience informed the design of them. And they needed to be delivered in a way that allowed people to really experience, we call it a bit of a double bind, a situation where you put people into, it overwhelms all aspects of what they would normally do to manage that risk. And it forces them to reflect on the need to do things differently. And so the whole design of the scenarios were these severe to catastrophic events that would fundamentally challenge all elements of the system. And then people would then have to start to reflect on what that would mean and how they would deal with that differently.
Our Bureau of Meteorology colleagues did a magnificent job in helping design those and deliver the scenarios to people.
And defense helped us understand. I think all these organizations had to recognize that this would overwhelm the current ways of doing things. So,
I recall those workshops being lots of aha moments for a lot of people as you took, and the other other members of the team who I'll introduce during the course of these episodes that we're running too, did a magnificent job on actually helping people go through the process. So we had a team on every table, didn't we, of helping people understand it so they're not left to their own devices. And you introduced to me and to the project team, and obviously it's the values, rules and knowledge concept, which was obviously in your world very well established and lots of academic basis to that. But it was new to us. Inherently we all knew it, but to have something that helped us fully understand it, to me, was a game changer, and it ended up being a fundamental part of the final report. Is really, what do we truly value, and the decisions that are made, and based on what? Is it the rules? Is it the values? Is it the knowledge that we have? Or is it all three? So, and my recollection of going sort of into the design of the workshops, you guys had been using some of these various techniques and methods international. So you'd been travelling a lot and helping in the Pacific, and when we first met you were working in Papua New Guinea. So there are a lot of these concepts we actually ended up using. And we started designing this, that I asked the question of you guys, have you ever used these methods and techniques in Australia?
No, we haven't.
And you hadn't?
No, that's right.
Do you want to reflect on that? Because I think that, to me, that was like, what? Tried and true, used methods from everywhere else, and we're not using them here on, as part of our own toolbox. I found that extraordinary.
Yeah, and so, I mean, you're absolutely right. So in the work that we were doing in Papua New Guinea and Indonesia, and we were working with communities, local governments, the equivalent of state governments and federal governments over there, there's maybe it's a cultural thing, but they are, in a way, they were much more willing to and trusting or of doing differently, trying new things, and being adaptable and willing to trust the science, these external people come in and try something new, and they would all buy into the process, and we learned so much through doing that. Where in Australia, there's a I don't know. It's almost a bit of a conservative way to going about making decisions, or a nature of engaging with decision makers. It's almost there's a sector that does things in a certain way, and it's been tried and tested, and that's just the way we do it. And what we had learnt in Papua New Guinea was, if you try to address a novel problem like climate change, you need to start to think and do things differently, and it really requires innovation and experimentation, and there seems to be a willingness to do it there. Whereas here, maybe it's the regulatory environment, or there's a cultural or disciplinary challenges that need to be addressed. And so the opportunity that you provided through the process that you had developed with Mark kind of created this license, this opportunity for people to come in a protected environment to say, right, let's do something innovative here. Let's step out of our normal ways of doing.
That's what I felt too.
It really enabled us to bring all this stuff in and try it for the first time, and everybody
in a
bought
safe
into that.
way, yeah. But it almost became magical to me. I don't recall ever having any significant pushback from anyone about the project.
I think interesting, maybe the timing look, Mark
we
created
tapped into something inherently, to the fog of uncertainty and ambiguity that people were feeling at the time, and we tapped into that. And then again, I think using the convening power of the Commonwealth in such an open, transparent and honest way to really co-design this, to really get to the heart of it, resonated with people, and they were in. I get goosebumps thinking about it. Just how enthusiastic and generous and honest people were with their thoughts and their comments and their participation.
One of the things I really got out of it, and I learned, and particularly I think it was from you, was that how important it was, and how much effort goes into building that coalition of critical stakeholders, the efforts that went into the conversations with Geoscience Australia, the Bureau, CSIRO, Defence, Emergency Management, all these, and the jurisdictions too. And that gave it the legitimacy and the credibility that it needed in order to really start to explore these really difficult issues and allow people to have very difficult conversations and explore new ways of doing. Just
again triggered another memory or a thought that I can add here is because I worked for AFAC, the Australasian Fire Emergency Services Authorities Council, the National Council for Emergency Services. I was working for them for about 10 years. So in that environment, whilst I was a senior person with the organisation, the members of AFAC are the jurisdictions. So the power all rests with them, and rightly so. That's where the responsibility lies, the accountability lies. They call the shots when it comes to AFAC world. My role was to facilitate outcomes on behalf of all of them, the problems that were being faced by the emergency services and the sector itself. Part of my job as the strategy and capability person, along with my colleagues, were to tackle those problems and really bring them together and find a common solution. So I reflect on this now, that I had no real power either in AFAC or with Emergency Management Australia when I was seconded there, but I had incredible influence. So, and using that sort of collaboration, knowing how to truly collaborate is an art in itself. And in the early stages, I'm not sure if you felt this, I felt that, not from you guys necessarily, but from others, there was a bit of hesitation. Are you for real? You truly want to co-design this? You're not just going to take something out of the bottom drawer and give it to us? No. This is real. This is real, transparent collaboration.
There's also stepping into the unknown, like
together.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good point.
And I think the other thing that I really got out of that whole experience was that the idea of identifying key champions, and they had to be relatively senior, but willing to step in and have the confidence as a leader to do differently and create that environment within their organization or their sector to drive that change. And the setting up of as part of the initiative, that governance arrangement,
the advisory panel,
of senior champions for change, and in creating an innate environment was something that was it was quite new to me, coming in from CSIRO, where we had projects that with that kind of reach and influence and idea of if we want change to happen, you've got to get the right people and the leaders in the room to be able to have the courage and confidence to do it. Yeah.
Yes. Do you want to take a little break there?
Yeah.